Hi, I'm Beth, and this video is brought to you by Baby Lock. Straight line quilting looks great and is easy to accomplish on your home sewing machine. Today I'm going to share some tips for straight line quilting and also some design ideas. For machine quilting, it's all about the prep. Make sure you've basted your quilt really well with basting spray or pins. This will help prevent the fabric from folding or bunching as you're handling it. To get the stitching right where you want it, we do recommend marking your quilt before you start quilting. Water-soluble pens work great for marking your quilt. So take your acrylic ruler and measure the section and decide how far apart you're going to quilt your lines. So I'm doing a 1/2 inch. We do recommend water soluble rather than air soluble. That way you don't have to worry about your lines disappearing if you don't get around to quilting right away. Before using a water soluble pen, be sure to test it on a scrap piece of fabric first to make sure the marks are easily removed. If you prefer not to mark on your quilt, you can use painter's tape or masking tape or a Hera marker to mark on your quilt. So both of these will leave marks that you can follow, but you don't have to worry about removing them. And I'll show you how this Hera marker works. So it's really just a hard plastic tool. Use it the same way with your ruler and just run it along, and then you get a little indentation that you can follow for your stitching. So this is what it looks like when you've marked with the Hera marker. So you can see that there's indentations in the fabric for you to follow. Next, let's talk about machine setup. We always recommend a walking foot for quilting. A walking foot helps feed your quilt sandwich through at an even rate. It's an optional accessory for most machines, but definitely worth investing in if you're going to be doing a lot of quilting. When you switch over to your walking foot, it's the perfect time to put in a new needle. A fresh needle will get through all those layers much better than a dull one. We're using a 9014 quilting needle as it has a long sharp point to go through multiple layers. And it's always a good idea to test your quilting on a scrap sandwich first to make sure everything is working properly. Another helpful accessory are these quilting bars. So these can be added to either the right or left hand side of the walking foot, and that can help you get perfect spacing. So you can either line this up with the previous line of stitching, or here I'm going to use the edge of this border. So you can just set it up to line up right where you want it, and then we will use that as a guide. So the nice thing about using these guide bars is you just have to mark your starting line, and then you can use the guide to line up with your previous line of stitching as you go across the quilt. A simple way to make your straight line quilting look custom is to echo around a shape on your quilt top and then fill in the rest with straight lines. This can really accent a design in your quilt top and make it stand out, as you can see here with the triangles that I've echoed around. Another super helpful accessory to this Baby Lock walking foot is this 1/4 inch foot with a guide. So you can pop off the normal foot that comes with it and add this one instead. It has a guide which is really helpful to get a consistent echo around a shape, and then it also has a clear front so you can more easily see where you'll be stitching. Another simple way to use straight lines when quilting is by using a crosshatch design. A crosshatch is diagonal lines that intersect either across the quilt top or a quilt block. The nice thing about using this design is you can make it continuous and avoid so many starts and stops. Click the link in the video description to find a download that will show you kind of how to plan that out. First, figure out the spacing you'll want to use throughout the quilt. Take cues from your design to see where the lines would look best. I wanted to accent this block with the more intricate piecing, so I ended up with lines 1 3/4 inches apart. So I've already used a marking tool and marked all my diagonal lines across the quilt. And now we'll begin stitching. I'm going to start stitching down the longest diagonal, which in this case is through the center of the quilt. And if your machine has a laser light, this is a great time to use it to make sure you're staying on that marked line as you stitch. When you get to the corner, stop with your needle down, pivot, And then we're going to travel in the seam allowance to our next marked line. Then we're pivoting again, and now we're going to go back down the marked line the other way. Stop with your needle down, pivot, and then in the seam allowance we're traveling again. To our next mark line, pivot, and then we'll go back the other way. So you always want to travel in your seam allowance so you won't see those travels then once you bind the quilt. So just make sure you are within that 1/4 inch seam allowance and you'll be fine. So you'll just continue filling in the diagonal lines in this same way. So we've reached the corner. Now we're going to pivot and we're going to go all the way across, back in the opposite direction. And so this will start giving you that crosshatch design. So you just continue filling in your diagonal lines according to the diagram until you filled in the entire quilt. So here's the finished crosshatch design. It looks great, and I was able to do it all in one continuous line of stitching. For another variation, you can try using a serpentine stitch instead of a straight stitch. It gives a little bit softer look and adds a ton of texture. So you can see there's so many different ways to incorporate straight line quilting into your quilts. So if you're looking to finish your quilts at home using your domestic sewing machine, give these tips a try.